Yeah, so Thelle Mogoerane. Okay, sorry. So Thelle Mogoerane is a regional hospital. It's in Vosloorus, so it's one of the townships in the East Rand, and it drains Vosloorus, Thokoza, Katlehong, Heidelberg, Germiston, and some of the other surrounding areas. So you often hear people call it the New Natal Sprayed Hospital. That's because it's relatively new. I think it opened its doors around 2014 or so, and it replaced a hospital in Katlehong, which was the old Natal Sprayed. So it has the big specialities, your internal medicine, surgery, peds, um, and then it has the sort of the other smaller specialities or the more specialized specialities, ENT, neurosurgery, urology, ophthalmology, and dermatology. So in terms of the first year rotations, I'll just go according to the sequence that I did the rotations in. So I started with internal medicine. It's a 3-month rotation. And in my year, there was 40 interns in terms of the intake. And so roughly you would get 10 or 11 interns per rotation. So I think there were 10 or 11 of us in internal medicine. And the department consists out of 4 units, and the interns will be divided amongst those units. So there'll be 2 or 3 interns per unit. And per each unit, you would find a consultant, senior medical officers, and then maybe a medical community service doctor as well. And how it is that there's a number of wards, so female wards, medical, male wards, and obviously then the clinic. And what would happen is you would get there in the morning, and you go to the ward that you're allocated to. You see patients, and then maybe you round with a consultant or you round with the medical officers. And then after that, obviously, then you do the ward work. And then depending on which day it is, you might have clinic, and then you would go to the clinic and see patients in the clinic. Or if you are on call, then usually then depending on the arrangement in your unit, you would either go home and come back at 4, or usually one of you would cover. Sorry, so my dog is in the room, so these funny noises are from the dog, so just please excuse her. So yeah, as I was saying, after your ward work duties, then you'd either go to casualty to cover until 4, or you'd be pre-call in a way, or either you go to clinic if it's your clinic day for your unit. There wasn't really any, it depends on your unit, but in my unit, there wasn't really any pre-call or post-call. So on the day that you are on call, you'd start in the wards, do your usual duties, and then maybe have a short break. And then at 4, you'd go to casualty and you'd see patients until the following day. The following day, then you would obviously then round on your patients that you've admitted and also your old patients. And then you do your ward work duties, and then you can go home after that. So internal at Thelle is probably the less intense block. So yeah, it was really doable, a good quality of life. On an average day, you might leave around 1 or 2 p.m. And then one of the interns is on cover and so on. So it was really quite doable and generally a good block. In general, the overtime, the hours are kept at 80 hours. So you'd have 2 weekday calls and then 2 weekend calls, and that would roughly give you the 80 hours. And then I then did peds. Pediatrics at Thelle is very, very busy. It's probably the most intense block at Thelle in your first year. And it has various stations. So you have the casualty station, you have the clinic, so your POPD, and then you have your neonates, which is Ward 2, and then you have 2 other wards. I think it was Ward 14 and Ward 4, if I'm not mistaken. And then the group of interns, the 10 of you, for example, each day would be allocated to each of those stations. So if you're in casualty, you see the emergency cases, the patients that present to casualty. If you're in labor ward, you attend to deliveries. So deliveries in labor ward, deliveries in theater in terms of the cesarean sections. If you're in POPD, you attend to clinic cases. And then if you're in the wards, you round on patients, you do the ward work and so on. So PEAS was quite busy. It was a full 8 to 4 p.m. Shift if you're not on call. In terms of the calls were very hectic, especially during the week. So during the week, there's only one intern that's on call, and you cover labor ward, you cover casualty, and then sometimes, depending on the senior that you're with, you might also cover the wards. And then during the night, during the 16 hours, you rotate through different stations as you are required. Post call usually would be around 10 or 11 the following day after ward round and doing the ward work. So there's also neonate duties. So you would either, in terms of your post call, you'd either be allocated to the wards, so ward 14 and ward 4, or you'd be allocated to the neonates, ward 2. With the neonates, you see the neonates, there'd be a set number of patients that you must see, and then you round with the consultant, and then after that, you can go home. Alternatively, if you're in the wards, you see patients and then you do the ward work after. But post call was around 10 or 11 or 12 sometimes. And then I then did general surgery. General surgery as well, it has 4 units when I was there. And each unit is 2 interns or 3 interns, a comserve, medical officers, and then a consultant. And then how it is that you have wards, female wards, male wards, pediatric wards, and the Ben's ward. And then you would divide it amongst yourselves in terms of the interns, and you'd see patients, and then you'd round with whoever the senior that is on the floor. And then depending on the day of the week, so depending on your unit, you're going to have an elective day for theater. You're going to have an emergency day for theater. And then you're also going to have, obviously, the clinic day. So after your ward round, either you'll go down to clinic to help out in clinic, or you prep patients for either elective theaters or emergency theater. And then one of the interns, you can just decide amongst yourselves who's going to go to theater to assist. So the calls during the week, you call alone, one intern with a senior. Sometimes it might be 2 seniors. And then you're based in casualty, you see patients. Sometimes you might be called up to theater to come and assist. And then during the weekends are usually busier. So often, if you guys are not short-staffed, there might be 2 interns that are on call, and then 2 seniors as well that are on call. And ideally, how it should be is that there should be 1 intern in casualty, 1 intern in theater. But those things are internal arrangements, and you can just usually work that out amongst yourselves. Yeah, in surgery, it is busy. I mean, especially month end, or during the festive season or during the holidays, it can get busy, but it's certainly doable. And then the last rotation in first year was obstetrics and gynecology. It didn't have units, but instead there was different stations. So you'd find the gynecology ward, you'd find the maternity ward, you'd find labor ward, and then there's clinic, antenatal, and then there's elective, and then there's emergency theater. And then the interns are divided amongst those different stations. And then, yeah, if you're in theater, you assist with cesarean sections. If you're in the gynecology ward or the maternity ward, you see patients and you round with your senior. And then after that, you do whatever ward work is required. And sometimes you can finish early, but usually if you're in the emergency theater, usually you leave at 4 once the on-call team arrives. So yeah, that's about it for first year. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions, or I can just go to the questions that were sent to me.
Thank you so much, Doc, for such an insights based on the blog that you have done in your first year rotation. I'm so sorry that I was late. My name is Andile Mkungo, and I was supposed to chair today's meeting. I'm from the medical. You've answered the first question that I was going to answer you. The second question is about the DQ. Can you please tell us about the DQ of Thelle? How is it? When you get there, is it fully finished? How much do you pay for DQ? Like everything about the DQ.
Okay, yeah, sure. So no, don't worry about the late thingy. It's all good. I think I was also maybe a few seconds late, so it's fine. So yeah, with question one in terms of the work environment, sorry. So what is expected of interns? Yeah, so it depends on the rotation. You see the patients, you present to your senior, and they either advise you on the management plan or we continue with whatever management plan that you had sort of derived. So common things occur commonly. So in terms of your first month, obviously you won't know what's going on, and you'll still be what can I say, your confidence might be a bit low, but usually towards the end of the first month and by the second month, you sort of more or less know the common conditions that occur in the department. And usually if you pay attention and you generally a person who's there and doing the job, you should be able by then to be able to manage some of these conditions comfortably by yourself. So Thelle is not an academic. It's not academic. The setting is not academic. So you'll get excellent practical exposure. You'll be able to do basic things, procedural things, but certainly you won't be having very long ward rounds and theoretically intense and so on. But if you ask questions, people will be able to tell you and assist you. It's a very nice environment. It doesn't have that tertiary typical type of environments where you are kind of expected to know everything. So yeah, most people, if you don't know, you ask, and then next time you know what to do. The DQ, sorry, unfortunately, I don't have photos because I'm no longer working there. But as I said, the hospital is relatively new. So the DQs as well are relatively in quite good condition compared to other DQs in the rest of the country. They are in sort of a gated complex with electric fence around the yard, and then there's a security that's also at the entrance gate. When I was there, I know alcohol was not allowed, and also overnight visitors were also not allowed. So within the complex, there's housing units for the nursing community service nurses, and also for the Fidel Castro medical students that are at the vet circuit. They usually have sort of a typical res university res setup where it's just one room where it's your bed and you have to figure out how to sort out everything else. The bathrooms and the kitchens are communal for those units. But then for the medical doctors, for your first year, it's a one bedroom setup with with a bathroom or shower setup and a kitchen and a small sitting area. So very adequate spacing, fairly well finished. So ideally you should have a fridge, you should have a 4-plate stove and an oven, you should have a microwave, and you should have a couch as well and a bed. So, but yeah, so you will have those basic things, but those things are dependent on which unit you get, because unfortunately, I don't know, maybe budgetary constraints or whatever, some of those things might not be in good functioning condition. So for example, I had to buy, I think, a microwave, for example, but the other things were there. So it might just depend on your luck. You might have to buy a fridge or maybe, a stove and so on, but the basic things are there. And then in terms of the second year interns, you get moved to a different unit. And that unit for second years is a 2-bed arrangement with a bathroom and kitchen and a sitting area type of setup. It's also furnished as well, 2 beds, fridge, microwave, and a couch setup. So I saw some questions about rats. So I'm not technologically advanced, so just please tell me if there are questions that are popping up in the chat box. Then Andile, you can just tell me those questions and I can answer them same time. So yeah, so that's the DQ.
No
It's less
problem,
than
Doc, I'll let you know. Of
Okay, so the DQ complex is less than a kilometer away from the hospital. It's literally maybe like a 4-minute walk during the day. The street is very busy, so during the day you can walk. It's usually very busy with healthcare professionals, either going to buy food and so on. So usually during the day you can just walk, or and you can just cross the street and go into the hospital. There's also a bridge that connects the hospital and the DQ, and it's a secure type of bridge. On both ends, there's security guards. So at night, you can use that bridge when you're on call or when you're going to the hospital at night. And then you pay roughly 1,000 rand, and this includes electricity and water. And then parking, I think you pay, it's 100 rand or 150 in terms of parking in the DQ and in the hospital. You get a sticker on your car that allows you to be able to use the parking facilities. Okay, I forgot to say that in terms of the DQ, depending on the intake of interns, so obviously there's limited space, both for the first year and the second year units for medical doctors. So if it's a large intake of interns, you might find maybe some interns remain in the units that are designated for nursing and the medical students. So my advice in terms of that would be, if you do get allocated that side, try and arrive early so that you can put your name down for the DQ allocation. Then hopefully, if you are one of the top people on the list, then hopefully you should be able to get space. But usually no one has never got DQ, but it's just that the ones that are nice are a bit more limited. I think there was a question in terms of nearby areas. There are other areas around. Usually rent is affordable. You won't struggle for a place. It just depends on how fancy you want to be, I guess. But there's areas that are surrounding Alberton, Carnival City, Boksburg, Don Park, those nearby areas. I think you would be able to get decent accommodation if you don't want to stay in DQ. But generally, I would just advise you to stay in DQ. And then what was the other question was, oh, can you do without a car? So in your first year, you can do without a car, but you are in Vosloorus, it's a township. It's one of the dangerous townships in the East Rand. But definitely there is Uber and Bolt and taxis to get around, but those are not some of the safest options. So if you are able to get a car, I would advise you to get a car from first year, but it's not a must. In second year, you definitely do need a car, because family medicine, it's a 6-month rotation in second year, and you do get allocated to clinics and a district hospital. So there you will have to sort out your own travel arrangements, and usually then if you have a car, that just makes things easier. Salary, yeah, the famous question. So yeah, so as an intern, as a medical intern, you, relative to other careers, you do start a bit high, but you quickly plateau. So when I was there, it was roughly around 45 to 46 thousand rands after tax, and I think the overtime was roughly 10K, and then the basic salary being 34, 35K. So it works around 46K. But this is really dependent on where you end up. If there's rural pay, I think I've even heard of something called the danger allowance. So it might vary, but I think you can expect a minimum of about 44K going upwards. Um, Quality of life, yeah, very excellent quality of life in Thelle. Uh, Good, like I said, you get 2 weekday calls and 2 weekends. Uh, it depends. In obstetrics, we used to do 12-hour calls during weekends. So it would be 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. or 8 p.m. to the following 8 a.m. So in that scenario, obviously you'll do a bit more of weekend calls. But usually if in a department you're doing 16 and 24-hour calls, then you just have less calls. And usually you can expect about 2, 3 weekends a month. So yeah, generally a very good quality of life. I think if you land up in Thelle Mogoerane, or Tambo, Polusong, Far East Rand, and Eden Vale, you generally should have a good quality of life in comparison to Baragwanath or Tembisa Hospital. So yeah, that's about it. I think there were some questions in the chat box. Um,
Yeah, Doc, there are some questions from the chat box. The question says, Doc, was Thelle your first option?
yes, it was my first option. Konji, what were my options? But it was definitely my first option. But I remember I also had Rob Ferreira in the mix. I also had Polo Song, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I wanted a good quality of life. I'm generally not. I believe in working hard in moderation, so I didn't want bara and those type of things. So yeah, it was my first option. It's becoming a bit popular now. So yeah, you might struggle to get it, but I would put it as a first option as well if you want to get in.
Thank you, Doc. The second question says, is it true about rats eating cat eyes?
Yeah. So look, man, it all comes down to hygiene. Unfortunately, communal areas, not everyone conforms to the same standards of hygiene. So there was a bit of an issue in terms of refuse management. So obviously, then that obviously attracts rats, and the parking bays. Not all of them are sheltered, and obviously, then rats can be an issue in terms of the cars and so on. But when I was doing my second year, they had they were there was good management of that, so there were very few rats when I was living there. So yeah, it's all just about picking up after your own waste, and then yeah, then you won't have a. But it wasn't a big factor, hey. It's not like yeah, it wasn't a big factor, but there were rats in the first year, but second year the population had declined.
Another question says, how early can we start arriving at the DQ?
Uh, so I forgot how it happens, but I think you should be getting confirmation of where you are placed and then an offer of employment, if I'm not mistaken. And then I think you need to go to HR and submit documents and so on. I think when was it? Probably from the 20th upwards of December. I think we had started going to HR and sorting out because they close, remember, for December and so on. So sometimes they want to get started with the paperwork before they go on their holiday. So, but usually, yeah, as soon as you know where you are placed and there has been some communication in terms of when should you come to sort out your HR documents, I think you can go then. Yeah.
Another question says, I'm not sure if I missed it, but first year and second year DQ is non-sharing.
Yes. So the first year DQ and the second you don't share. The difference is that the first year you have only one bedroom. The second year units you have two bedrooms. Both have your own bathroom, your own kitchen, and your own sitting area. So yeah, you don't share if you get into those units. But if, as I'm saying, if there's a large intake of interns and then some are unfortunately not placed in those units, then the other ones are communal.
Thank you so much, Doc. I think that's all we wanted from you. That's great, Doc. If there are people who wanna contact you, how can they get hold of you? Do you have any social media account, any Facebook, any Instagram? How can they contact you?
Yeah, sure. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, Lwazi Yende. So yeah, on Facebook, my profile is a dog, so you can just send an invite, and then on Instagram you can just invite me as well. I'm always happy to answer any questions because it is a bit of a stressful phase that you guys are in, and yeah, it helps to alleviate the anxiety when uh, people are able to give you information.
Mm, okay. Thank you so much, Doug. There's another question that popped out just now. It
Yeah.
says, are there any assessments or tests like at some of the hospital for certain rotations?
No, we don't do those things at Tele. So like I said, it's not an academic orientated setup. Some departments do have registrars, and you guys are expected to present amongst yourselves, but there isn't end of block assessments or anything of that sort. Some departments, the head of department might require an interview, a one-on-one interview with you, but usually it's just basic questions. How was the rotation for you? How can it be improved? And basic questions on some common conditions that you would be more than comfortable to answer. But I haven't had any experience of someone having failed and being told to repeat the block. So listen, I think if you do the average of what is expected of you, you should be able to get through the blocks without any issues. But I mean, if you are dedicated towards being a horrible intern, yeah, then people might find reasons to hold you back. But the admin is usually not worth it.
Thank you so much, Doc. Guys, any other question that you wanna ask? You can raise your hand or you can just open your mic and speak.
Yeah, feel free. No one's gonna bite. Um, this is the time to. You can ask anything. Very transparent. Uh, General advice. Yeah, I mean, you can take it, you can leave it. I don't know. I'm assuming you guys are final years, so someone in your class is probably going to advertise your contact details and so on. And there's going to be all these kind of companies that are showering you with gifts and so on. So just try not to be too excited. At the end of the day, people are running businesses, and it's profit driven, and not everyone has your interest at heart. So be very, very careful of some of the products you sign up for. Do your own research. Don't just take everything at face value, especially the more investment related products, because people will sell you products that they are either affiliated with or products that they get a massive commission on. And so it doesn't always necessarily mean those products are good for you. So just do your own research as well. Um, Compare the fees, so platform fees, compare performances of those products, compare reviews, and so on before you sign up on things. And then Financial advisors are good to help you to stratify your salary in terms of how much must you save, how much must you invest. So just have a basic approach, basic things, a good medical aid or a good medical plan, a good gap cover, good life insurance, dread disease, income protection, funeral policy, those type of things. Don't think, I'm young, nothing's gonna happen, and then and then life happens. So just try and have the basics covered. Uh, the car one is a controversial thing, but my advice, especially if you land up in Thelle or one of the surrounding townships, buy a simple car that will allow you to blend in, and you'll be able to save some decent money, especially because a ComServe post is not guaranteed. And obviously, then you know that medical officer posts are also very difficult to come by. So try and build up some reserves so that you can be able to buffer yourself during those transitions. So yeah, that's a bit of life advice, I guess. Oh yeah. One thing I wish someone had told me. I mean, yeah. Listen, do those courses, eh? As soon as you get into internship, one of the first things that must be on your calendar is to get a ATLS date, so advanced trauma and life support. It's very difficult to get an ATLS slot. So the earlier you try and get your name either on the waiting list or whatever, then hopefully by second year internship or ComServe, at least you can do your ATLS. ACLS and PELs are not so difficult to get, but and I think the expiry is 2 years. So try and space them throughout your internship. Don't try and do them all at once in bulk. Try and space them throughout your internship. Financially, it's a bit easier as well because they are quite expensive. But also confidence-wise, it just helps you to manage resource conditions. Which bank do I prefer? uh, yeah, so I mean, I don't advertise things for people as they're not paying me, but I definitely would go with private banking. It just more convenient. The fees are obviously higher, but it's just more convenient. You get lower interest rates in terms of financing a car, in terms of your first housing, and also private bankers, if you really utilize them to the max, they can become quite beneficial to have. But it's not a must. If you're able to get a decent account, that's also fine. But usually, if you, yeah, like compare websites, go to these banks' websites and compare their bank fees, what they include, and try and find what works best for you. But I'm not advertising anything, but I mean, I would probably choose either Investec or Netbank. Netbank, I think it's cheaper after 30. Investec, the fees go quite high after 30 years. I think when you're still under 30, I think you get some form of a rebate. I think the fees are 300 and something, but as soon as you're above 30, it goes up to 600 and so on. But I think Netbank, even after 30, is slightly cheaper. But obviously, the services are very different. So you just have to try and see which bank you go with. It's not a lifetime contract, this bank thing. There is a bit of admin related, obviously, in terms of your salary and HR and all those things. But you can change banks at any time. Don't ever feel that you are, yeah, you are, what do you call that? You are set on one bank. Also, for your car or if you buy a house or whatever, you don't have to use the same bank you're using. If they're giving you crappy interest rates, you can shop around and yeah. So yeah, that's the one on the bank thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sayende. I think you've covered most of the things that most finally I want to hear.
Mhm.
And I see there are no any other questions. The video will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you can just let your classmates know that whoever wanna catch up, but Thelle, they can always go to our YouTube channel, the Internship SA, then they can find the video. Once again, thank you so much, Dr. Andy, for honoring our invite and sparing us your time to come here and have this talk with us. We are very honored and thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thanks guys. Thanks for the invite. I hope I was able to give a good idea of internship at Thelle. But like I said, you can just drop me a message at any on my social media things, and where I'm able to answer, then I'll be able to answer you.
Thank you, Doc.
All right,
Siyabonga, guys. Siyabonga.
all right. All the best, and see you guys around.